When is the appropriate time to question a miscarriage of justice? Is it when a person's already lost their job, been 2 years, I think, on remand, or more than 2 years, and was over the legal time limit on that amount of remand, had gone through HAL, had gone through all the court appearance, everything, and then being convicted. Apparently that's not the appropriate time. I was told by Rennie Huntercombe that it was on the day of the conviction, that on the day after the conviction, that it was not the appropriate time to be talking about this. She did a typical mainstream media thing, which is invoke an emotive argument about victims. Now, nothing's about the families, obviously. Of course they've got their issues to go through, their grief and everything, and no one's arguing with that. That's not the point. Under our law, British law, UK law, victims have zero rights. Or whether or not you agree with that or not, it's not a great thing, and I found that to be a really difficult thing. But that is the way that the law is. The victims have no rights. There is a code, there's a victim code, which mostly gets ignored. Let's face it, because the police are great at treating victims appallingly, but they have no legal rights in a sense. So the idea that anybody in the British system cares about victims is ludicrous. They just don't, okay? And the idea that it's not okay to express an opinion on the day that someone's convicted because victims are involved, again, it's total nonsense. But it's typical media tactic. It's like, let's make this a moral issue. Let's say that morally you are a bad person. You are an evil person because you dare to question the establishment on this important day when there are these poor, grieving people that this media presenter doesn't give a flying F about, obvious, but she's going to pretend that she does, or they're going to pretend that they do, to invoke this idea that somehow it shouldn't be done. It should not be spoken. Words should not be said. On that particular day, by the way. Just on that particular day. Because apparently the grieving of parents who've lost babies only occurs on one day. And that is the day when and if somebody is convicted of their murders or whatever, collapses. So that grieving occurs, according to Talk Radio, that Rennie Huntercombe, that grieving occurs on one day, right? Any other day, presumably, she would have been fine, but that day is the only day that grief counts. Well, it's total nonsense, and I would say that there is no earliest point when you should question if you believe there's a miscarriage of justice. And you don't even need to have concrete evidence. If you just believe in your heart, you're entitled to express it. And I would argue that, when I questioned that, I didn't have all the facts at hand, and I was stumbling over some of my words and saying things which weren't probably technically correct at the time, but I was trying to get over because I hadn't learnt enough at the time about it. But the point is, even if you believe it in your heart, right, you can question it, and you should question it. And I believe you should question it. And I at the point of not only on the day of conviction, long before that, before someone's ever put on remand, or before they're on bail or remand or wherever they are, before they even get arrested. If you think someone's going to be wrongfully arrested, then speak out then. If you think someone's been wrongfully arrested, and the idea that we should somehow wait. Lucy had already been locked up for 2.5 years, however long it was. Am I going to wait? Are we all going to wait till when Rennie Huntercombe thinks it's morally appropriate that we question it? And this has no bearing on the grief of the families. They lost their babies. Well, at that point it was 2023, so it was 2016, 2017, 15, 16 is 7 years. So it's 7 years. So they'd already been grieving like a long time. And in any case, so I know all these things bring all that stuff back, but that is not my responsibility or any of our responsibility. I didn't cause those deaths. I didn't cause those collapses. I am just questioning that an innocent person, at the time I was just questioning that an innocent person might be in prison. That's all I was doing. You know, and the idea that that is morally wrong is so absurd, you know, but it's how our media work. And they work in the most insidious, or mainstream media, but, you know, obviously there's stuff online but as well, but the mainstream media work in very insidious ways. And they know this, they know what they're doing, they know what they're doing, they do it deliberately to morally to intimidate you so that you will be scared to speak because you will be morally defunct or inferior if you dare take a different position to the mainstream one. And of course that does intimidate a lot of people, and on many areas, you know, we know that it's difficult for people to speak out on lots of subjects, and that's one of the ways they do it, with their moral, you know, here, look at me, I'm so moral and good, and I so care, like they care. They don't care a damn. They don't care a damn. You know, I don't believe they care a damn. You know, I don't know, but I just don't believe they do. Because if they did, they wouldn't be in the job they're in. You know, because you got to put out some pretty awful stuff if you're going to work in the mainstream media, I've got to say, and you've got to go along with some pretty appalling lies, and you've got to knowingly do that. Unless you're totally thick, you knowingly do that. Yeah, anyway, I'll leave it there, thanks.